Ari Louis Show.
Welcome, everybody, to today's episode of the Ari Louis Show here on IsraelSportsandNewsRadio.com. Thank you for joining us. We have a great segment today. At any time, you can email us at arilouisshow@hotmail.com, or you can email the station at IsraelSportsandNewsRadio@gmail.com. The NBA Finals completed last week. Still a lot of questions left to be answered. On the line right now, our good friend who predicted the NBA Finals before it started, Doug Gottlieb. Doug, how you doing out there?
I'm good. I don't know if I nailed the carrier then he get hurt or LeBron James would put up historic numbers, but the Warriors end up raising the championship trophy.
Yes, indeed. Let's talk for, so much of the story is about the Cavs, what's going to happen with them, but let's start with the Warriors team that won 67 games. And I brought this up with Joe Robbins that this may be a potential dynasty team. They're deep, they're young, and they seem to have just on a roll. Steve Kerr is a great mind. Can you see this team potentially winning 2 or 3 titles in a row?
In a row? Probably not. And the reason is, I know the numbers would say, their best offensive team in the league, best defensive team, best record in the league, and of course they won the championship. But as Steve Kerr pointed out after the last game, a lot of things went their way. They didn't sustain any major injuries. Everybody else, like literally everybody else in the NBA did. All those things have to go right again and have to go wrong again to put them in the same position. And then the biggest challenge is always, can you come back hungry? Do you have the same drive when you've already accomplished it? Do people accept the same roles when they come back as champions? Like, Andre Iguodala accepted that he was coming off the bench this year, and they won a title. All right, but now I won a title. Now I don't want to come off the bench. People change. So, no, I personally don't even think they're the best team in the NBA if everybody was healthy. It was just a bizarre year where everybody had injuries, and even though the West on paper is the much better conference, the fact is that because Kawhi Leonard missed almost half the year, and the Oklahoma City Thunder, everybody missed at least a month, and Kevin Durant missed half a year, and Blake Griffin missed a couple of weeks, and Houston wasn't healthy in the playoffs, and Memphis wasn't healthy in the playoffs, and New Orleans wasn't healthy. There's a reason we generally don't have repeat champions in American professional sports. That's because it's really, really hard. And I also think that you have to be really lucky. And the idea that you'll be that fortunate 3 years in a row, not likely.
So let's talk a bit about the West coming up next year. We'll talk more about the NBA Finals, but you have a great point about Kawhi Leonard, and there's apparently a wink-wink deal with Tim Duncan coming back. So if everybody's healthy, even if the Warriors are the champions, would you say the Spurs are the favorites next year coming out of the West?
No, I say the Thunder are. The Thunder have a new coach in Billy Donovan, who's been a spectacular college coach and never coached in the NBA, so that's a big question mark. They have to re-sign Enes Kanter. But, when you have 2 of the top 5 players in the NBA, and then they seem to figure out a way to find more scoring as they've made a bunch of these trades, and they have a lottery pick, a 14th pick coming up in the NBA draft, and they have some cap flexibility as well, potentially, because they amnestied Kendrick Perkins. I mean, they have some things going. They got Serge Ibaka back as well, who was hurt this year. If they're healthy, I would say the Thunder, the Spurs, the Warriors, the Cavs. Those are the 4 kind of premier teams. And I like what the Clippers are doing. Remember, the Clippers, who, like the Spurs, never got a chance to play the Warriors, but they've already added Lance Stevenson, and they traded Spencer Hawes, who didn't play much for them. And then it didn't play much, at least in the playoffs for them. And then the assumption is that Paul Pierce will join them, and he'll fill that void at small forward, something they just haven't had since Doc Rivers took over. He tried to sign Jared Dudley. He wasn't good enough, and he's tried Matt Barnes, and he's not good enough. And though Paul Pierce is a shell of what he used to be, because he's surrounded by such supreme talent, they can hide some of his weaknesses, and he can just make big shots and big plays. I like the Clippers as well. And then there's some other kind of outliers. The Pelicans seem ready to make a jump. We'll see if they hired Alvin Gentry. The Bulls now have an offensive mastermind in Fred Hoiberg, and assuming they re-sign Jimmy Butler, I think that's a team that is right there in the conversation. The Wizards seem to be very, very close. Now, I think it's a really competitive kind of group at the top of the NBA, and we're yet to see where some of these high-priced free agents land. You still have the Grizzlies who are lurking out there as well. So I would say, though, that the top four, Golden State just, they're people forget they also benefit from the fact that Steph Curry, though he scored a lot of points and made some great plays, early in his career he had these devastating ankle injuries. And so when they re-signed him, it was like $40-something million. It was not a huge sum of money. So he's not, even though he's a max player in production, he's not a max contract player in salary. And so that allows them more flexibility to bring back Draymond Green. Obviously, David Lee is going to be elsewhere, and to continue kind of playing with this current roster, whereas other teams are still trying to tinker with their roster and adjust to the cap. So, I think the Warriors are there. I think the Cavs, the Spurs, the Clippers, and the Thunder, and frankly, the Bulls are all in that conversation.
Again, this is the Ari Louis Show here on Israel Sports and News Radio. We're joined by Doug Gottlieb, talk about the aftermath of the NBA Finals. Let's go to the team who lost, the Cavs. There's certain questions if Kevin Love's going to come back or not. LeBron's going to opt out, but that's part of the whole contract situation where he'll get more money because of the TV deal. And then David Blatt, there are certain rumors about him not coming back. He and LeBron didn't get along, etc. Give us your take on what's going to happen to the Cleveland Cavaliers.
I'd be stunned if Kevin Love comes back. I know he said he wants to come back. He said he wants to be part of it or whatever. But in professional sports, people in Israel can kind of attest to this. So much of your contract is based upon what you did this past year. And so next year is the big year for free agents because the salary cap in the NBA is going to spike up because that's when new TV deals kick in. That's when some new revenue streams kick in. And so there'll be more cap room to sign players for more money. So that's why even the free agents this year are probably going to sign one-year deals. Some guys are just going to hang on to their deals. Well, if Kevin Love comes back to the Cavs, remember they already have Anderson Varejao come back. Not that he's going to play a huge role, but Timothy Mozgov's back. The likelihood is they re-sign Tristan Thompson, who's represented by LeBron James' agent and close friend. And then LeBron likes to play some power forward. So just in terms of getting the minutes, in order to get points, you got to get minutes. In order to get rebounds, you got to get minutes. And so the idea that Kevin Love would re-sign to a place where he didn't really fit in, and though he was needed in the NBA Finals, they still almost won without him. And I feel like he's a guy who's smart and calculating and understands that his big payday is going to be next year. And he's always wanted to be in a big market. And he has that opportunity. He'll still have that opportunity next year. I wouldn't be stunned if Kevin Love finds any sort of challenger, any sort of team that can potentially make a run towards an NBA championship and signs a one-year deal and then puts himself in play to have a big year this year and then land with the Lakers or somebody next year, the Lakers, the Knicks, or whatever. Maybe he signs with the Knicks this year. So I think Kevin Love does not return. I think Tristan Thompson comes back. Obviously, Kyrie Irving will come back. I don't know about David Blatt. There's been some stories written here about how much LeBron kind of manhandled him, not just in the media, but on the sidelines. And David Blatt has just taken the high road. It's an honor to coach a guy like this, blah, blah, blah. But that's not how he really wants. I don't think anybody really wants to coach that way. And at some point I wouldn't be stunned if Blatt just said, screw it, I'm just going to go and coach a team in Europe or coach another NBA team. I don't know if you don't ride out the wave in order to win an NBA title. And that's probably the challenge. Because I'm sure he can come back if he wants to come back. It's just very, very awkward. And I think they want him back more for continuity than they do because they like him so much. I think he did a good job, considering you have a guy who is very, very hard to coach. But it wouldn't stun me if at any point he just goes, the hell, this is not what I came over here for. I came over to coach an NBA team, and this is not coaching an NBA team.
But is it more of an issue where LeBron tries to put his foot down and say, play a game with them? Maybe I'm not going to re-sign until you guys figure out the whole coaching situation, where he wants to get the public opinion high to not look like he forced the coach out, but in reality, behind closed doors, he would try to force David Blatt out. Do you see that potentially happening?
Well, look, LeBron obviously does have that power. The crazy thing is, here in the States, he doesn't really. LeBron really doesn't have leverage. Can he leave Cleveland? Yeah, he could. I mean, he can opt out and go sign wherever he wants. But he put all of his chips. He went all in the poker, to steal the poker analogy, on Cleveland. I'm coming back to win the title. I'm coming back because more than basketball. It's about kids and something to look forward up to, and having a feeling of optimism in Northeast Ohio, and blah, 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 blah. And so you can't pen this article about how it's about more than basketball, and I want to win, and I want to make it work, and then because you don't like a coach who's trying to coach you, you're going to go and sign somewhere else. Like that, there's no way. You would get slaughtered in the media here. Slaughtered. So it's a big challenge for Cleveland. Are they going to grow some fortitude and say, hey, look, LeBron, are you going to do it our way, or are you going to do it your way somewhere else? The problem is that to this point, or at any point in his career, Cleveland has never done that. They've never shown. The only people that showed him backbone were the Miami Heat, and he ran from the Heat last year. So, that I'm sure Cleveland's sitting there going like, look, if we stand up for ourselves, he's going to leave. But the truth is, he has nowhere he can go. There's nowhere he can go. That even though he's not under a contract, he's under a social contract to stay. And I think that's the big challenge for Cleveland in the offseason.
A great point. Again, you're listening to the Ari Louis Show here on Israel Sports News Radio, joined by Doug Gottlieb, breaking down the aftermath of the NBA Finals. There was a lot of talk during the series, LeBron potentially winning the Finals MVP, even if the team lost. That happened only once in the NBA. Jerry West with the Lakers. Out of 11 votes, 4 went to LeBron, 7 went to Andre, of course, who won the MVP. Want to get your take of LeBron's case of winning the Finals MVP, even though the Cavs lost in 6 games.
Look, he was the most valuable, most important player on the floor. And if we're going to take MVP as that, then he should have won it. The problem is that the MVP doesn't necessarily go to the best player, the most valuable player. It's like in America, the Heisman Trophy is supposed to go to the best college football player in the country. It doesn't. It goes to the most prominent skill position player, the best team with the best stats in the country. And that's kind of how it works. So, in terms of title of the award, yeah, he should have gotten it. But it's not generally how it works. It goes to the best or most important or game-changing player on the team that wins it. So I probably would have given it to Steph Curry because I think that Curry had a greater impact on the series than Andre Iguodala did. But I actually think it's out of respect for LeBron that Iguodala won it, because Iguodala was the guy guarding LeBron. He was the only one who had any sort of chance of slowing down LeBron, and because of it, he receives the award of the MVP, which actually tells us all you need to know about how people feel about LeBron James.
All right, and this question actually came from one of our fans. The NBA draft, there is this gentleman named Sean Dawson, Maccabi Rishon in Israel. Want to know if you could talk a bit about Sean Dawson and some of his potential, and if you think he could make it in the NBA.
I do. I think he's got a shot. I mean, it'll probably be a second-round pick. I know scouts have flocked over there to get a good scout on him. And, the great thing about playing in Israel is, in many ways, because you're playing against grown men, it's a different and a better look at how a player can progress into the NBA. I think he has the athleticism. I think, in terms of having, I'm not sure he has a defined NBA position, but that's the great thing about how teams are playing now is you don't have to be a pure 2 or a pure 3. And it's my best guess that kind of like Guy McHale, who, came over and made the Dallas Mavericks. I think, Summer League as a second-round pick, or maybe even if he's not drafted, but coming over and taking a look at him in an NBA-style game, will give us a kind of a better sense of exactly where he'll fit in. The one flaw is that in being one of those hybrid players, which means, you can play a bunch of positions, is a lot of times starters can get away with that in the NBA. Bench players are kind of defined role players. Coaches want to have all right, here's a scoring point off the bench. I want a shooter off the bench. I want a stretch 4, a stretch 5. I want, a guy who's a 6'11", just a rebounder defender or a low post scorer, whatever. And that would be the one thing he would run into here. But I think the potential is absolutely there for Dawson to come over as a mid-second round pick. And as we've seen, there's been a lot of guys that have had success at that spot, maybe even more so than late first-round picks in the NBA draft.
All right, so we'll certainly keep an eye on Sean and hope the best from him. Hopefully he gets picked, joins the team, and does some successful things in the NBA. We really appreciate the time. Again, I'm going to speak with Doug Gottlieb about the aftermath of the NBA Finals. Thank you so much for being on the Ari Louis Show here on Israel Sports News Radio.